I'm calling this meeting to order. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, September 9th, commencing at 7 p.m. Council members in attendance are Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Nueva Camina, Council Vice President Forsyth, Councilmember Fields, Councilmember Anderson. Online, we have Councilmember Salahuddin and myself, Council President Kritzer. We also are joined by Mayor Burney. There are 3 items on the agenda tonight: Teen Services Engagement, final report, update on Housing Subcommittee, and Council Talk Time. The first item on the agenda is the Teen Services Engagement final report, and we have Lorene Hamilton, our Parks and Recreation Director, here to introduce this item. Go ahead.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Lorene Hamilton, Parks and Recreation Director. This evening, we're bringing forward the final report for our Teen Services Engagement process that we commenced earlier this year. Just a reminder that this is really the wrap-up for that particular engagement process. The results of that will be feeding into our next process around the OFH facility, but tonight we're really hoping to focus in on the results in the report, and then it will move forward into the next process. So this evening, my Deputy Director, Zach Hoovener, who managed this project, will be sharing this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present the final findings from our comprehensive Teen Services engagement process. I'll start with a project overview, then share the key insights we heard from the community, address the specific questions you raised during my touch points with you all in April, May, and July, and finally discuss our next steps moving forward. This spring, we launched a comprehensive engagement process to better understand teen needs and priorities in Redmond. We cast a wide net, engaging current and future teens aged 11 to 19, along with their parents and families, caregivers, teen service providers, community members, and OFH alumni across the city. I do want to ground us in what we were providing before this project kicked off, because understanding our baseline could help us as we move forward toward the future. We have served different needs and demographics even before we transitioned services out of the old firehouse. We have teens who have and continue to use our services for vastly different purposes. In the first quarter of 2025 at the old firehouse, we served 122 unique teens. We served drop-in teens who've used the space for studying, socializing, homework help, counseling, and creative activities. We have a robust Redmond Youth Partnership Advisory Committee, or RIPAC, engaged in civic leadership and youth development that utilizes the spaces on the first and third Thursdays of the month. We also held all ages live music events, everything from concerts, open mics, and other performances. The operational hours were Tuesday through Thursday, 3:30 to 8 p.m., and Fridays, 3:30 to 6 p.m. When we held live music, those hours were extended. These hours and times are also replicated at our new teen lounge over at the Redmond Community Center at Marymore Village. Our engagement had 4 key objectives. We wanted to understand what Redmond teens actually need, not what we assumed they needed, but what they told us directly. We wanted to know how teen services and programs can effectively meet those needs and identify any gaps in service. We needed to understand where and how teens currently access services and programs, including transportation barriers and location preferences. And most importantly, we wanted to learn how the city can better support our young people moving forward. I'll walk you through our comprehensive timeline because the methodology matters for understanding the credibility of what we heard. We began with engagement planning in December 2024 through March of 2025. In January and February, we conducted 4 stakeholder interviews with teen services staff, Parks and Recreation leadership, RIPAC teen leadership, and former old firehouse directors to understand past context and best practices. From March 28th through June 16th, we ran our teen services questionnaire, our primary data collection tool. Throughout April, May, and June, we were active in the community with 17 different tabling events at schools, parks, community centers, and partner facilities like the Redmond Library. We held community listening sessions and teen group meetings in February, March, April, and May. We conducted 6 service provider discussions to understand and strengthen our partnership opportunities. We completed our engagement reporting in July and August, and we are now here in September sharing these results with you all. We created a dedicated project website that received almost 4,000 visits from March through June. We issued 2 news releases to announce and promote the engagement. We distributed over 7,800 utility bill inserts to reach households directly, plus digital inserts for online bill recipients. We placed posters in over 10 city buildings, parks, and other public facilities. We posted over 55 social media posts on the City of Redmond and Redmond Parks Facebook, Instagram, and X pages. We sent 11 email updates through City of Redmond and Redmond Parks email newsletters with 13,000 and 36,000 subscribers, respectively. We included promotions on 3 monthly city teen programming calendars, and we sent emails to 64 teen service providers and Redmond school groups. Our Let's Connect Redmond webpage questionnaire received 317 responses, each representing someone who took significant time to share detailed thoughts about teen services. Depending on how the respondent identified, the questionnaire logic had questions that were tailored to that specific demographic: current and future teens, parents, guardians, and caregivers, service providers, and community members. Our service request system, or Q Alert, was also set up and generated 28 comments and questions from community members in which staff responded to. In person, we conducted those 4 stakeholder interviews to understand professional perspectives. We had 2 meetings with the members of RIPAC and the Redmond Library Teen Advisory Board, or REDTAB. We provided updates to our Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission, the Redmond Arts and Culture Commission, as well as our Senior Advisory Committee. We facilitated 2 community listening sessions where 46 total community members participated in small group discussion. We had conversations with 6 service providers about collaboration opportunities, and we engaged directly with teens and families at 17 events like Cinco de Mayo, the Redmond High School Jazz Band concert, the Sound Transit Link Rail opening, and school tabling sessions reaching over 1,300 community members. What we heard: teens and adults expressed a need for safe teen spaces that allow teens to have a sense of ownership and autonomy, and where they can safely and comfortably explore their identities without judgment, particularly for low-income and LGBTQI+ teens, a demographic that represented 42% who filled out the survey. Other frequently mentioned needs included outlets for creative expression and development of life skills through access to programming and resources in music performance and production, creative arts, career exploration, mental health, financial literacy, mentorship, and volunteering opportunities. Teens would like to have programs designed and led by teens with the city's support for providing resources for implementation. Suggestions from community members for additional programming included STEM, sports, creative arts, and professional development-related activities. Teens and adults frequently emphasize the desire for free or low-cost, accessible services and programming to reduce barriers to participation. Teens emphasize the importance of the city teen services staff who have empathy, shared life experiences, and are relatable. When it comes to specific programming, we heard loud and clear from our dedicated music community that they want us to continue to offer music and creative arts programming into the future. They'd like us to increase existing program frequency and variety. Mental health services and resources ranked high on teens' priority list. We also heard about offering culturally responsive programming reflecting diverse identities and backgrounds. In the survey, nearly 20% of teen respondents are first or second generation immigrants, and over 13% have a disability, highlighting the need for inclusive and adaptive programming. Location and accessibility matter tremendously to our community. The old firehouse was the preferred location across teens and adults, followed by Redmond schools and the Redmond Library. Teens' top preference for transportation to services and programs are being driven by others. Parents showed a preference for having shuttles from school, and both teens and adults showed preferences for active transportation methods such as walking and cycling. Responses also showed a desire for services and programming along existing public transit routes and to have these services and programs accessible via multiple transportation modes. Both teens and adults would prefer teen services and programming in a downtown Redmond location for easy access. At the same time, people also had an interest in distributed services and programs throughout Redmond neighborhoods to bring programming closer to where teens and families live and go to school. 2 related topics came up repeatedly throughout this engagement. As you're aware, the city relocated teen services and programs from the old firehouse to the Redmond Community Center at Marymore Village and other city facilities. As part of this process, we created a new teen drop-in space at the Redmond Community Center at Marymore Village, or RCCMV. Regarding the old Firehouse Teen Center, we heard requests to reopen OFH for teen services and programming. Teens expressed a powerful sense of ownership and belonging. Both teens and community members expressed nostalgia and emotional connection, recognizing its long history and legacy of empowering teens and fostering community. When we held events in the new space, similar comments that we received in the questionnaire also came up in person, including supportive, inclusive environments, expanding mental health support, and increased engagement opportunities for items that impact teens. The community also gave us clear guidance on how the city can improve our support. They want us to maintain transparency about how their input informs actual outcomes. They want to see their voices translated into action. They need increased transportation access to participate in programs. For outreach, they want us to reach them through social media, school events, and in-person channels where they already are. We also heard from many individuals, particularly when tabling at community events, that they did not know the city offered teen programming, while others, particularly at the Redmond High School Jazz Band concert, told me that they were well aware of the Teen Service Engagement Project, which I shared with our communications professionals, as I was very excited to hear that we do have community that is getting the e-news and learned about the process that way. We're committed to incorporating this feedback into the implementation of future teen services and programs. We're planning further conversations with teen service providers to explore collaboration opportunities. We're integrating this feedback into the Old Firehouse scenario planning and our community engagement process that kicks off tomorrow. We will continue to listen to the community in a variety of ways, through data, signups, engagement feedback, questions, comments, and then operationalize that based on the feedback. When things do well, we do more of it. When things don't do well, we do less of it. For example, when we hold the Shape Your Space night in May, we heard from teens who wanted maker spaces, book nooks, and specific lighting changes. When we recently closed last week, staff from our recreation facilities team made those changes. We now have sewing stations for teens to make alternative attire patches on clothing, along with a button-making machine. We now have a section in the teen lounge dedicated to reading. We have free snacks and take-home food, hopefully helping those with food insecurity. All of those changes were based on teen voice we heard throughout this process. There was specific questions on how or why we separated user groups into different cohorts in the committee of the whole meetings and how we could help bridge the gap between them. One specific example of how different user groups have different needs came when we did a transition from teen services from OFH to the Redmond Community Center at Marymore Village. Our music group did not like the lecture hall space, not necessarily set up for live music. However, when RIPAC teens went into the space, they liked it as it could provide spaces for class and activities like career development, life skills, etc. Same space, different user group, different potential based on their own needs and preferences. Another question was asked about how we market life skills programming and make it appealing to teens. We've been working with our partners at Youth Eastside Services, or YES, and have been putting together classes that will assist our teen demographics with how to deal with anxiety, social pressure, and other challenges teens face in 2025. We're excited that we recently heard that our YES counselor will be starting full-time in October. It's a fully benefited role now. YES funded that gap, and it does not change our support from Human Services grants. The counselor will be housed at our Redmond Community Center at Marymore Village location, and will also be working within the school system to meet kids where they're at, promoting the resources, classes, and activities the city offers, and not just limiting the information to youth coming into our facilities. From a marketing standpoint, we're always learning about new ways to reach our audiences, from tactical things like retargeting specific audiences that signed up for similar programs in previous sessions, to working with the school district, in-person and word-of-mouth campaigns, using our committees and advisory groups to help us spread the word. Council asks questions about what is uniquely needed and where the gaps are that the city is best positioned to fill. 3 unique city roles emerged for me. First, civic engagement opportunities. City government can provide platforms for teen voices for city involvement. Second, neutral, safe, convenient spaces. Teens emphasize needing spaces that aren't school, home, or commercial venues. Third, resource coordination. Our conversations with service providers revealed that they want the city help, our conversations with service providers revealed they want city help connecting rather than duplicating our services. We have neutral spaces. Parks and Recreation has dedicated customer service. We have centralized marketing. We have reach, but we still need to continue to partner with our service providers to expand and create programs and opportunities for community members who will be moving to Redmond in the future. With that, we are trying to make it easier for partners and contractors to get involved, including updates to our contracting process so that when we partner with organizations or individuals who have their own communities, we include those distribution channels so that we can share and expand that messaging out. Another question was raised about how the city is thinking about this report and how it connects to the park plan and serving teens across the city, especially in Overlake and other urban cores where there's an anticipated influx of residents coming into our city. This report not only connects to our park plan, but also our 2017 community center study. The community center study report talked about centrally located community centers in our urban areas, particularly in Overlake and Marymore Village. Implementation of the park plan is influenced by community engagement that we do around each project. How we act on those opportunities is guided by the community engagement specific to that. One small example of how we could connect this report to the park plan is to eventually hold rotating RIPAC meetings in the Overlake neighborhood to engage youth who will be coming into Redmond. We're also looking to activate Estera Park for both signature events as well as third-party permitting activities, as the space is currently limited in that specific region. As city stewards and as one of the park plan's core priorities, it is to design spaces for all ages and abilities and encourage multifunctional design. Flexible use is core to the park's plan priorities. Given these principles, it allows us to be proactive and to think ahead to future generations of teens, while programmatic design can help cater to the unique needs of different groups that we serve now. Council asked about our adaptive programming for teens and feedback for adaptive and inclusive needs. Unfortunately, our summer adaptive sports were canceled due to low preseason enrollment. We only had 5. And our adaptive program coordinator accepting a position elsewhere. Given those limited staffing resources, we made the difficult decision to prioritize inclusion services for summer camps, which just wrapped up, and support the children who need assistance to participate in camp programs. We're continuing to work with YAS to offer mental health support, along with our new recreation program coordinator, focusing on inclusive and adaptive needs. We will be offering social activities, sports, trips, and tour outings in the near future. We are committed to bringing back the robust programming this community deserves. In closing, our community is incredibly diverse. We saw that meeting people where they are, literally and figuratively, yields diverse perspectives and inputs rather than asking them to come to us. Multiple engagement formats to reach different voices. I also felt that our approach was deliberately adaptive. For example, when initial surveys and public comment addressed concerns regarding transportation barriers, we tried to address those concerns in our FAQs, staff responses, and in talking with teens who use our spaces. We have a roadmap for implementation that's already begun, partnerships with organizations like YAS, KCLS that are rapidly expanding, and a framework for continuing to listen and adapt as our community grows. The foundation is built through authentic community input and intentional program design. I'd like to thank you for your attention. I'd like to be happy to take any questions you might have about our engagement process or what we learned throughout this process.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Fields?
Okay, so I see all this. I see the work that you put into it. The lessons learned is important to me. I think, and these are fine aspirations. I agree with the change of course or the change of tactics that you've described, or the enhancement of tactics. But I still sort of feel a lack of confidence that you can achieve, that we can get the trust, and we can get the engagement, and we can get our teens to see our hopes for them as something that is viable and something that we can accomplish. I can't give you specifics, but there feels like there's something missing that we need to do. I guess my question for you is, does this give you a sense of confidence that we are making adjustments to engage our teen community and their parents at the same time? Because really the strength comes from the family. And I get that there are all kinds of different families out there, but when I see teens and their parents together trying to describe their ideas, that really has a powerful impact on me. So I guess my first question is this enough from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think for any report that staff engage in, I think there are always opportunities for, lessons learned for future things. I think what I see for this report, it is a data point. There was great engagement from our community on this. But as I previously mentioned in other committees of the whole, it is a living document. I don't think that we can comprehend all of it, within the time that we had in order to present it to you. Our staff are aware of it. Our staff breathe it. Our staff are trying to improve upon it. But also, as I mentioned, staff are always ready to listen. As unique opportunities come up and as different demographics come into Redmond, it is constantly changing. And so I would say that, yes, overall, I am confident that the report gave us foundational opportunities to help our teens now, but I also want to make sure that this is not the end-all be-all, and that as we continue to program the space, as we continue to engage community, that there are options for our teens, there are options for our staff to address those opportunities and challenges as they come up.
Yeah, I would think that the only thing I would add is your question is this enough? And I think the answer is, well, no. Plans are just that. They're plans. They are a data point, like Zach said. And so what I have seen that's really gotten me excited is that as we are entering into this next step, I see our staff saying, we heard this here. I think we could incorporate that in the meetings that we're going to be having in these ways to engage teens in a more effective way. And so they're using it as a data point to help them connect more with teens. It's not enough because it's a document, right? And so the real test of these efforts always comes in the implementation and the what's next and where do we go from here. I've been really encouraged to see a staff person who's been with us for a month, engaging with our consultants and saying, what if we did an exercise like this to engage teens differently? That's, to me, when it starts being enough. If it's just a piece of paper that we bring into this room and say, look at the great work that we did, it's not very inspiring, and it's probably not enough. And so where it becomes enough is when we take that into the next stage with our staff and really center the work on what we've heard so we can move into the future.
Quick follow-up. Go ahead.
How quick? And Director, you did pretty much answer what was going to be my second question, which is, are those resources in place, and is there a training or some sort of education for that staff in place that would say, here's your mission and here's your tools and your strategy to accomplish that mission, and we want to pay a lot of attention to this at the executive level?
Yes and not yet. I think it's one of those things because we've just learned it, not yet. And there's an identification that there needs to be refinement of processes, retraining, onboarding of new staff because we've had staffing turnover. All of those things are going to come. And so we are working on our recreation program plan, which is that contract has come through this body as well. And in that process, some of these types of trainings are being raised as, hey, these are tool kits that we need to make sure that we have fully developed for our staff. Our recreation division has grown a lot over the last 20 years, and we need to make sure that we have really set our staff up to be ready to respond to the needs as they come. So yes, and there is a commitment to that, and some of it is going to be built as we learn more about it. Yep.
Thanks. And don't worry, we'll come back around if you have more questions. Council Vice President Forsythe.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the learnings. I'm interested to hear from you, both of you, if there's anything in the feedback that surprised you, that came as like what you weren't expecting it, because from what I'm seeing and from the conversations I've had, the emails we've gotten, the public testimony, the conversations we've had at Derby Days, those sorts of things, all of this is in alignment with what I've been hearing. So I'm interested to hear if there's any shockers for you guys, and how, now that school is back in session, how we're making sure that that our teens know, have more of that, like where they can go, what they can do, what options are available, continuing those conversations.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think, firstly, the surprising thing was just the incredible depth and diversity of our community. I mean, I know that we know that, but as we went out into community, as we went to the Cinco events, as we went to Sound Transit Light Rail opening, I mean, the report, and as I mentioned, like, people want everything. Okay, so how do we incorporate that, and how do we strategize on what do we take action on? And so I think it's maybe a lame answer to like what surprised me, but it is just the incredible depth of diversity that Redmond has. And then I think the only other thing I would say is, it was not eye-opening, but it's always, good to hear feedback from community and say, I didn't even know we had teen programming. I didn't even know we had teen services. Can you give me more information? And so using that, continuing to partner with organizations and partners, and again, trying to use their own reach and distribution channels to get, wraparound services for our teens, because ultimately, at least from our perspective, we want teens to succeed in Redmond, not just from City of Redmond programming, but from all the organizations and all the resources that they have available to them.
I would agree that I don't know that there was anything that shocked me or was extremely surprising, because there was such a knowledge going into this as to the diversity of our community. I think that what I found most, and it wasn't surprising, but reaffirming, is that the needs are just so varied as to the number of people who walk into our spaces. And the example that Zach shared about how when we did walkthroughs, have done walkthroughs through RCCMB, and we bring our facilities staff out working to make the space as welcoming as we can for our population, and there are spaces that some are saying, this is cold, we don't like this, and then there's other teens in that same space saying, this is great, you could use this for 500 different things. And I just, that surprises me, right? Because I think it's so often we say, and I think we experienced this when we did the senior center process as well, the teens all X or the seniors all Y, but really the diversity within that population is just so immense. And so it got me really excited about the opportunities that are there. And yeah, how do we prioritize those? How do we make those decisions from a programming perspective as we move forward? And that's kind of the excitement of the next stage for our staff to really work and dig into the community to figure out.
I think the only other follow-up to that, and if you allow me to get a little bit personal, I think as someone who kind of project managed this and learned a lot about teens and what teens are going through nowadays, and as a father of a 1- and 3-year-old, it made my eyes open about, I'm incredibly empathetic to our teens that have gone through COVID, that have gone through changes, that have gone through transition of facilities, transition of staff. And so how do we help support them, and how do I, as a father, as a deputy director, how do I engage and create programming for our community to help this demographic that's going through a lot right now?
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. I think about the breadth of the work that was done on this, and I think about our demographics. Both, we're one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Washington. Our average age is 33 years old. We've got more and more families moving in. We're going to add another 33,000 to our numbers already. We're doing a push on high-density housing that includes more 2- and 3-bedrooms, therefore, with the expectation of more families, more teens. Having recently launching my teen, he's an in-betweener, as he's going into college now, and heavily engaged with his friend group and young people throughout our high schools, all three at Redmond High, Eastlake, and Lake Washington. Conversations that I've had on football fields and lacrosse fields and at community gatherings, and looking at how adaptive we have got to be, both in now taking a look at what is the data telling us, and then trying our best to, in anticipation of the families that are moving in, and how do we, because we are so incredibly diverse, and bringing that all together. So I'm grateful that we've got the data that we have, and I appreciate, Director, your input of, no, it's not enough, knowing that it's a document at this point. Where do we go from here, and how do we do it with the best interest of this particular demographic, knowing that it is most definitely not a monolith, and making sure that everybody has a sense of belonging. So thank you for bringing this forward and continuing to be in this journey that we're on.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you so much for bringing forward the final results of this project. I don't have any immediate questions. The summary that is going to, especially around the questions that lie most immediately ahead of us, the statement that it will just ring true for me over and over, I'll put it at the top of every page of notes, is folks are looking for a safe teen-only space that creates connection and belonging. So I just want the public to know that, we hear that loud and clear. I also think that, we funded this study because we wanted this information, knowing that we have an incredibly diverse community, knowing that there's a ton of opportunities for teens in our community to be involved in school, our own programming, programming that is put on by nonprofit organizations, athletics, the like, what is uniquely the city's role, and what is the gap that the city can uniquely be filling? And now we have a bit more of the answer on that. So I actually think that confirmation that music and access to these mental health services, it's a win. This study is a win that those things were affirmed for us, and it's really clear that we need to continue to invest in those. And I also think as a council member, there's a few things in this report that I've written down for myself, especially moving into 26, that we now need to hold ourselves accountable to. So a few of the really exciting things that you mentioned, Zach, the things that perk my ears always are, the things around activating Astera Park for the signature events. How do we do that in a way that it can also have a youth-led element or youth leadership really involved? Civic engagement. It came up at our retreat. It was certainly something we were interested in, but the creation of a youth council, a counterpart to the city council, I think we should come back to that in 2026, and it's a perfect year to do it because it's a budget year. Putting teens on the rest of our commissions, that's something that we have been discussing on and off the last couple of years. I think we should get serious about that as a council. So all to say, thank you so much to the staff who worked so hard on this. Thank you to all the public who participated. And I think what we walk away with most of all is a list of things that it's now our job to also work to deliver on. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think for me, one of the exciting things is it identifies those things. And we're also with us being in the process of the recreation program plan, so much of that question of what are those gaps in the community and how do we as a community fill them? We've never had this data before about teen services. And so being able to also incorporate that into this greater division-wide understanding, because we do have this piece of understanding what our core services have been, and then we're hearing, well, the hope would be that there'd also be neighborhood-centered services and that there's a hope for a broader reach. And so how does that then come into our recreation program planning on the whole and influence that more global universal work that we're doing? To me, that's where I get really excited about this work, is because it allows us to think wider than what we have thought in the past. And that's really the goal of some of these planning efforts between this and things like the recreation program plan, which you'll get briefed on more as that process continues.
Thank you. Not seeing any others for round one, so I'll ask a quick question and then we can go for round two if there are other questions. Two things that jumped out to me, and first of all, I'll just say appreciate the work on this, and I think I'd echo my colleagues in terms of many of these things are things we've been hearing and engaging with deeply in our community, so great to see them show up formally in the report altogether. Two things that jumped out that I had questions on, just in terms of more of the details on what you heard. One was around examples that you heard of culturally responsive programming. What were some of the ideas that came from our teens that maybe, I guess, to some of the other questions that you hadn't heard before, or some ideas there? And then secondly, also noted around the transportation issues that I think got flagged. I saw that the RIPAC teens noted it, as well as other focus groups, and transportation issues specifically with RCCMV, and just curious to hear of any kind of the details you heard and any follow-up that you did on that.
Yeah, two great questions, and I think I don't want to misrepresent the culturally responsive programs. I don't have those top of my tongue, but I will say I think it's broader and more in depth of what have we done before. So, for example, we have a very robust youth basketball program that we have served the community for a long time. Are we still serving that cohort, or should we look to, again, for example, cricket leagues? Should we look at expanding programs to more financial literacy programs? And so I think that's more of the programming that we're looking at, of not changing things that we've done in the past, but also looking to expand in opportunities that we're hearing from community as they get into Redmond. I can also follow up with you after looking into the data and follow up if there's specific examples on that. Regarding the transportation issues, there's several things. So there was a lot of transportation related questions that came up both in public comment and Q alerts, public comment, et cetera. And so we tried to identify in our FAQs, particularly when the light rail opened, of the safest path to RCCMV. And so we have a question or a FAQ right now on our website that basically says, go down the newly created path, I think it's Northeast 70th, go along the route next to the Spoke Apartments, and then cut through. That's the safer route. I've also engaged with our public works crews, as well as I believe that they are going to be creating a crosswalk to help people get from the light rail station, where potentially like Google Maps or iPhone Maps tells people to go through is the quickest route. So I think that those are coming. Another example, and it's not necessarily just dedicated for teen services, and to be honest, I don't think it's going to solve teens' needs in particular, but it will solve community needs. Is we've been working with King County Metro, and we're hoping to pilot a community van being installed in a stall at the Redmond Community Center at Miramar Village, and we hope to announce that and get communications out in the near future.
Mayor Burton?
Yeah, and I know some people have noticed, but Metro actually added some and changed some routes throughout the city of Redmond, and so they do actually have routes that serve Marymoor Village now, which they hadn't before, and then they have changed some of the routes for the 220. It used to be 221, but it's 222 now, and I'm just looking at their maps right now. So there's a couple of different options now that just did not exist before and have a lot better service, not just to Marymoor Village, but throughout Redmond. And so for some of the, obviously our outreach was done by the time this all came out, but I would suggest to community members who were kind of struggling to figure out their way there to take a look at the new Metro maps, and that will give you a much better, some much better choices on getting there more easily.
There's also been a lot of internal conversations on with our staff about engaging with teens and figuring out what they need. And so there have been conversations around shuttles. There have been conversations around what a pilot program around that would look like. And so I believe that our new teen services coordinator has been working with her supervisor on that as well. So that, again, we did have, like Zach was saying, our program coordinator did leave the city. They moved back to the Midwest. And so we have that new person on, and they're working through some of those items as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, when Zach mentioned basketball, it made me think of what I consider something important. So my first introduction to the city of Redmond as a resident at a level was 20 years ago when I became a basketball coach. And the person organizing that league was a great ambassador for the city of Redmond. Actually, my appreciation of the city of Redmond went up because of that program. And I've continued to be involved in youth sports. I umpire roughly 150 or 160 games a year, ages 9 through 90. And I can tell you with certainty that those programs work when there is respect for the people who are managing the program, i.e. coaches, league coordinators, umpires. When the kids feel that they have a real fair and a good opportunity to enjoy this activity, you can see it in their spirit, you can see it in their eyes. Everything about it says this is successful. When it goes the other way, it definitely goes the other way. When you have abusive coaches, when you have people who don't care, I've seen a few umpires purposely make bad calls. I've never been one of those. So I think a set of values around this is really important to continue to what I believe needs to happen, which is sort of repair that relationship with our teens, a set of values, including respect and whatever you guys come up with. I get the programming, I get the transportation, those are all really important elements, but at the heart of it is the people, and the people treating one another and listening to one another, and actually believing that this is something that they want to be involved in. So I'm using my personal experience 20 years ago as something very inspiring for me, and I've continued to appreciate that over the years.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation, and this is a question from our audience. For these programs, given that the council doesn't get a lot of detailed data, what kind of operating metrics are being considered internally so we can ask better questions about things like staffing considerations and internal performance? Sure. For these programs, given that the council doesn't get a lot of detailed data, what kind of operating metrics are being considered internally so we can ask better questions about things like staffing considerations and internal performance? The direct question was about the rate of turnover on staff, for example.
I'm not going to speak directly to staffing turnover because staffing turnover within an organization happens for a multitude of reasons, and some are not mine to share. And so I don't think that that would be an appropriate conversation for us to have in a public forum. When it comes to operational metrics and how do we determine are programs being successful versus are they not, that happens on a number of different in a number of different places. One of them comes down to where does it fall in our cost recovery tier. And so if it's a program that falls higher into our cost recovery tier, it's important for us to make sure, so if it's falling into tier 3, for example, and it has a 70 to 110% cost recovery, thereabouts. If it's falling significantly below that, we need to reconsider that program. If that program's not filling, we need to reconsider that program. Is it not filling because it's not interesting? Is it not filling because it's not serving a need? Or is it not filling because of the cost? And that's a prohibiting factor. When it comes to things like our drop-in and tier 1, so tier 1 to tier 2, which is a 0% to an approximately
Tier 1, 0 to 10, but yeah.
0 to 10 in the first tier, and then tier 2 is 11 to 70%. It becomes less about, is it financially viable, and far more about, is it meeting the goal of that program? So for example, with our YES and our mental health services, are we having teens show up, meet with the YES counselor? Is the YES counselor able to engage with teens and help meet their needs? They provide us with statistics. They help us understand, hey, this isn't working here, so we need to go do outreach over there. And so it depends on the program. Sometimes it's based on simple things like attendance. I would say something like youth basketball, a lot of our measured success with that is that people come back. People enjoy being a part of that program, and they grow up in that program with us, which, as Councilmember Fields alluded to, if you're not having a good time, I have a 10 and 11-year-old, if my kids aren't having a good time in the sport I'm paying for, we're likely not going to go back. And so there is some of those metrics that happen as well. And so there's a reason why the programs that we continue to run, and it's because they have measured success in that. And there have been programs over the years, for example, some of our higher level equestrian work that we did out at Farrell McWhirter, which served a very small number of folks and was a very high cost, became something that we didn't serve, that we didn't continue on. And so that's a high level answer. There are metrics within our teams, but a lot of it comes down to what is the goal of that program and how do we meet those.
Great, and thank you for that very comprehensive response.
Sorry.
I also really appreciate the detail on the cost. We typically get those reports from Parks, which is great, thank you. The question I would ask for that is, this council tends to be pretty interested in diversity and inclusion as well. I'd love to see some metrics adopted on that, and if we can, next time we see it.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to bring those, and we track those metrics and all of that. I think we tend to not necessarily report on them in the same way because often we're giving like a summer camp, hey, this is how our summer camps went. But what I hear is that we should bring those as big of a focus, similar to how we've increased our storytelling around our fee assistance, because that's been something we've done in the last year. And so we can absolutely make sure that we're bringing forward more information about how many kids we serve with inclusion services, how many folks we're serving through our YES connections and things like that in our updates. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing, Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Tagging along with what Councilmember Fields had said earlier about the importance of maintaining values. And I think that, again, it's a very adaptive thing. And going through our comp plan process, going through our budget process, going through a number of updates, just making sure that everything that we're doing as we move forward, it's a critical time for Redmond as a city because of the amount of growth that we've got, with how innovative we are, making sure that we are always returning to those values and letting those guide us, being integrity, accountability, community engagement, aiming to create an inclusive and sustainable environment for all residents. So I just think about, are we being value-led in this? Are we staying true to our values? So just a comment, not a question inside of that, and just kind of bringing us back to where are we going and how are we getting there?
I'll just jump in to say, I think two things that jumped out to me that I think at the end of your presentation, you noted how do we take these things along and inform them into both our process as we think about the future of the old firehouse, as well as futures of programming. I think one of the things that I thought was really interesting is where you were able to engage, and as we think about engaging not only those who have been showing up and using our services, but those who haven't. Who are the ones that said, I didn't even know that the city of Redmond did this, right? And how do we reach more of that? And how do we make sure that we offer that kind of suite of services that will engage them and do the outreach that does that? And then I think one of the other things is just that it seemed like came across from all the groups was on, going to teen centered spaces. And I think one thing that's on my mind as we go into some of the engagements this fall on thinking about OFH is just whether we might be able to partner with the schools to do one of our focus groups, maybe at a school gymnasium, or, do something where we really, it sounded like even the tabling you did, you said you got 1,300 respondents by really going to, and whether we can just keep that as a practice and kind of think about how we kind of always do that, so that way we keep our processes very led by those who are going to be impacted. So just kind of top of mind on that, and I think that'll be a continued conversation unless you have thoughts on how we apply those learnings even further.
I don't think I have thoughts, and I appreciate the comment. I think as I was talking to our managers today and again, diving into the weeds of marketing tactics, how do we get the information out to community who maybe have not heard about programs? Again, one channel is that top of funnel email list. So City News, Parks e-News, when people sign up for recreation programs, they can opt into our email newsletter. And so that's just, again, one avenue to increase that number of people that are hearing the information, hearing the programmatic changes that are coming, and maybe being able to highlight some of the things that we've done with our contractor process. So how do we become more inclusive to contractors to potentially reach out to city staff to be able to say, hey, I have an idea for a program. Can I use city space? Yes, the answer is yes. Can I get resources? Can I get staff? Can I get, again, that centralized marketing? And so we're thinking about that as well to hopefully expand our reach throughout, again, their own distribution channels.
Wonderful. I'm not seeing other questions, so I think we'll bring this item to a close. Any final comments, Director Hamilton? Right. Well, thank you so much for the update. We will be having more updates throughout this fall on the OFH project, and thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is an update on the Housing Subcommittee, which focused a lot on reviewing some of the what we saw as some gaps and questions that had come up since we passed our tenant protections now almost over 3 years ago. We have Director Helland joining us. Serving on this subcommittee was Council Vice President Forsyth, myself, and Councilmember Fields. We worked very closely with Director Helland on this. And we just wanted to be able to, council leadership wanted to put this on the agenda, following up to be able to give count and also be able to get some feedback from the council. Our legislative coordinator, Deidre, sent out, we kind of got this on a little bit late on the agenda, I will say, so there wasn't initial materials attached, but we did have Deidre distribute to you all some of the materials of some of the considerations that we looked at. I'll give a brief summary, and then I'll also open it up if Director Helland or any of the members want to make some comments. But I'd say to give an overview, we started this work near the beginning of this year, really looking in particular at a set of different areas that have been identified by the community as some potential gaps or issues that had come up with the implementation of our tenant protections. And we went through with Director Helland, kind of line by line on each of them. One of the things that we ended up realizing early on when we looked at this in February was that some of the legislation around rent stabilization that was being considered by the legislature may address some of the issues that we had seen come up with some of our local protections, which were really kind of filling in some of the gaps that we saw in state law. So they were going to try to fix the state law and ultimately set the standard for everyone. And so we did end up waiting to meet until after we saw that bill pass. One of the things we did as a city, and I was able to testify, I think we had a couple other council members to be able to help pass that legislation at the state level and to be able to speak up and support. Really proud of our city and council for doing that. And then we reconvened in May after the legislative session with Director Helland and really looked through at how that legislation did close some of the gaps and identified that several of them did get closed that we initially were kind of targeting for our legislation. But we also wanted to look at what were some of the opportunities for us to still address needs that we saw at the city level and where we could move more quickly on certain things, since there were certain things that weren't addressed. And so one of the things that was attached from the email that Deidre sent out was a kind of comparison between what Redmond has in place and then and some of the issues that we looked at and how some of those are addressed by the legislation. Also, some information on how Redmond's current protections compare to a couple different neighboring jurisdictions as well. And we looked at a couple different issues and considerations on, what we might bring back to council. We have 3 ideas of some things that we would like to propose for the council to pursue going forward in collaboration with the administration tonight. But before I get to that, I will pause and see if, Director Helland, do you want to give any kind of initial comments about the conversations that we had on what we uncovered and in particular the considerations in regards to the state legislation?
Well, I think you've described it well. I appreciate that the council subcommittee was attentive to concerns about redoing work or work that churned over time potentially because of all the work the legislature was doing. And we did anticipate that most of the questions that had been raised as potential problems were actually looking like they were going to be addressed in the legislation, which did turn out to be true. So I appreciate that we were able to pause for a minute to actually see what was coming out of the state. We also do hear that the state may actually continue. Several legislators have said that that's just the beginning. It's not the end, and they intend to bring more tenant protection legislation forward next year. So just with that theme in mind, I really appreciate the opportunity when we do things to move forward some of the council initiatives that we have the opportunity to incorporate that into some of our current work program and not create new work program items.
Great, thank you. So I'll just give a high level, and then I'll open it up to the other subcommittee members to fill in here on the kind of 3 big things that we identified as actions that we as a council can take in the upcoming time. One thing that we identified, because we did want to talk a lot about the feedback that we've gotten on rising rents, while also recognizing the limits from our city to be able to kind of control those rents, but especially what we heard from those who are most vulnerable within our community and might have access to lower income units. One thing that we identified was that when we do updates to our multifamily tax exemption program, there's an opportunity for us to look at for MFTE for cost-controlled units, not letting them increase by a certain percentage year over year. So we could put some limits on how much those rents could increase on those specific units that are created as a result of multifamily tax exemption. And specifically, we could focus on the most vulnerable. And I don't know if you want to explain more about that, Director Helen, in terms of what the tool would be and the timing on that.
So we have, as part of Redmond 2050 follow-up, some MFTE amendments that we need to undertake. The council adopted new target areas, for instance, for MFTE, and connecting that to new options that are available now that there are 8, 12, and 20-year options. And so that work is already planned, likely coming back to council the beginning of next year. One option we could pursue when we do those MFTE amendments is something that Bellevue actually incorporated it after Arch had done some research on MFTE and concluded that we could place a year-over-year limit on the amount of increase for those MFTE units, and that was probably an appropriate approach.
Great, thank you. The second thing that we talked about, and I guess the second 2 things are connected in that one of the concerns is that we both have in the city a specific set of rights for tenants who are renting here. There also are a new set of rights and opportunities based on the new legislation that got passed. And we wanted to make sure that that tenants actually know their rights and could be able to engage with their landlords as needed on those. And so one of the opportunities we talked about was to amend the Redmond zoning code to require businesses to post information to like multifamily units, to be able to post information in the public spaces within their buildings of tenant rights. So that way people could have access as part of the new legislation. They're going to be creating actually a online resource from the state for tenants to be able to know about kind of the whole suite of their rights. And resources for renters, and in addition to what we have in our own city. So what we could do is kind of add this as a requirement for landlords to be able to post this information to ensure that that tenants are aware of those. The second thing is we brainstormed a long list of things that we could do to update on the city's own FAQ about our tenant protections and about landlord-tenant issues to be able to make sure that people kind of who are coming to our city website are aware of those different things. So between those different pieces to be able to make sure that people have access to those things. So those were some of the big things that we talked about doing at this moment. And then we also looked at a bunch of other things that are kind of more in the gray area between state and city policy. And as we discussed, some of those things may be coming back to be revisited in this upcoming legislative session. So I guess the last thing I'd say per our earlier conversation is to keep this item on our legislative agenda so that should bills come back that could further close some of these loopholes, we could still stand up and support those and be able to not only get this the changes for Redmond, but across the board for our state, which is really helpful. So I will pause there, and then I will open it up to the other subcommittee members to weigh in. Council Vice President Forsyth.
Sure, I'll jump in. Good recap. Thank you for all of that information. I'm definitely interested and excited about the solution we came to of making sure that the tenants' rights are posted in the multifamily units. I think that's a really elegant solution that we landed on, and also updating our FAQ. And we just this afternoon talked about what some of those updates are going to be, including how I've heard a lot from community members who are in some of these ARCH units and how they can't take raises sometimes because those raises will then potentially push them out of their housing. And Director Helen informed me of some programs and ways in which probably want to update because I'm not doing a very good job of it, but ways in which we can add some language to the website in that FAQ to make sure people know that there are solutions.
Right. So we can certainly provide more information on recertification and tenant eligibility. We would hope no one would actually foreclose a raise to stay in affordable housing, and they actually are able to get above the 80% AMI, for instance, or the 50% AMI for some period of time up to a certain amount. So they are able to, there is a transition period. And we also want to actually transition people to market rate housing when they can afford to do that, so that those affordable units can be made available for people that are at those AMIs and below. So there's a balance in getting people into the right housing, getting people into the housing that's the right fit for them, where their family size and income is taken into consideration.
Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, I agree that being informed is potentially being empowered. One of the things, I can't remember it was in the committee meeting or this is just a memory from one of our long budget sessions when we talked about what resources would be available. And I know that we cut back on legal support during the budget process for tenant protections. I think that we did. The question I have, though, is what resources can we make available? Because being informed when you're in a non-power situation, when you are the person not in the power situation, where a landlord, by eviction notice or by termination of the agreement, sort of has the upper hand, what resources can be made available besides reading a poster or reading words on a document?
Sure. So we do actually fund some legal services. There were some legal services that were cut back, but they weren't specific to tenant housing. We do also include on our website information about the Housing Justice Project and other avenues where people can find legal assistance. They have to qualify for that assistance as based on their income, but that is an option that is available to them, and we will continue to look at those needs, and our Human Services Commission will continue to evaluate that as we grant monies to those entities that provide those services.
Is there something less than legal support that can be made available to inform?
Well, we do have our, during community court, we do have a lot of resources available for people to come and make appointments. We do also have our outreach, homelessness outreach, and I know that's kind of scary to some people and can be off-putting just by the title, but they have office hours during community court and resource time, and they also have office hours at the Together Center and some of our other affordable housing projects in the city. And what we have been doing since we've been gathering data about how they spend their time is the vast amount, the biggest amount of their time. It is not the majority of the time, but I think about 40%, if memory serves me, is spent on housing navigation. So they actually help get people housed, keep people housed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess to the council members who haven't been serving on the committee, you get to hear a bit a description here. We wanted to come back to the council at this moment, and again, apologies, we got this kind of last minute on the agenda, so we didn't get to provide you with written materials of the items that we mentioned, but I'm happy to follow up with these written out. But did want to be able to take a temperature on, especially giving direction to staff of whether we'd like to proceed with the couple of updates, including, I'll just recap the MFTE provision that was discussed, the amending the zoning code to require landlords and businesses to post information on tenant rights, and then also updating the FAQ. And gathering any thoughts of FAQ things that you would want to see on there as well. We can provide the list after the meeting as well of what we've come up with thus far, but can gather tonight any of your ideas. So those are the couple of things. And then I think last would be to make sure that this is central in our legislative agenda and that we watch on some of those other trickier issues and revisit again after the short session to see what progress is made on some of those as well. So I'll open it up to the other council members for questions and comments. Councilmember Stewart.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I was on the edge of my seat coming into this meeting. And so first, I just want to thank everyone who was involved in creating this amazing work. I'm very supportive of the direction of all of these. It does sound like some of the other, from the 5 in your original minutes meeting agenda actually that came to the council, it does look like there's some other topics that are a bit more complicated. So I also really support this subcommittee continuing to stay together and working on this again, coming back to us after the ledge session. A couple of things on the MFTE, certainly if Bellevue adopted an ARCH researched proposal. I want to read the proposal, and I very much support us having a chance to review that when the MFTE updates come back in 2026. I have a few questions, but I'll save it for that, and just to say that I'm excited to read that. And helping to make sure tenants know their rights. I think this is actually hugely powerful. I've said this before, but no solution is complete without communication. And I personally have met multiple Redmond residents who happen to follow this must-see TV on Tuesday nights that broadcasts from our chambers. And because they were following along and they knew about our tenant protections, they were able to stabilize their own housing, whereas, others who weren't following every step of our original tenant protections may not have had that opportunity. So I do think that knowledge and communicating is really important, and I support that as well. My final comment is actually for the staff and the mayor who serve on the ARCH board. I actually think these solutions for recertification of eligibility, if I caught that all correctly, I think that's a perfect topic actually for, I know ARCH is interested in doing more programming for electeds. Many of us have attended the ARCH 101 multiple times. I think knowing how to navigate or explain to folks or help folks get to this webpage would be a great 201 topic because, like my colleagues mentioned, it is actually something that comes up a lot. So I would like to feel more confident in sharing out those resources. So thanks so much, and absolutely support this continuing to be on our legislative agenda.
Other comments, questions? Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Just a quick comment that I'll be in touch via email. Any questions or suggestions for FAQ, and then wait until we've got that available to take a look at it so that I'm not duplicating anything. And also to see if anything that comes out there kind of jogs my questions and get those in after that's provided.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'm not seeing other hands raised. I guess I'll just ask the question, does anyone object to us proceeding with with the plans that are outlined here in terms of the follow-up on this work? All right, not seeing thumbs up. That's great. Okay, seeing the thumbs up, we'll continue on that, and we'll follow up. We will continue the work of the subcommittee and advance some of this really important work for our renters here in our city. All right, well, that brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is council talk time. So I have one item for council talk time, and actually, well, a couple updates that I'll do after, but I wanted to first follow up on one item for council talk time, which I had flagged at the last business meeting, which is that Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Salahuddin, and I were able to follow up with several of our immigrant-serving community-based organizations. Mayor Bernie was also able to have an additional conversation with them, I think about a month prior. And then we were all able to come together to be able to kind of put our heads together based on what we've heard, to come up with some ideas for ways to address the needs that we're seeing in our community. I will, since I've been talking a lot, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Stewart to give a recap on some of what we heard. And then I'll also open up if Mayor Bernie or Councilmember Salahuddin want to share that. And then we'll jump in and share a brief update on an idea we'd like to bring for the business meeting next week to take some action.
Great. So you want me to share the idea or you're going to share the idea? I'm sorry.
You can go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to read my notes because we just worked on this a little bit this afternoon. But yes, to the council, way back in February at our retreat, we identified we want to be responsive to the needs of our community, especially given the impacts of federal action right now. We had several requests from our community-based organizations who are responding to our communities who are immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers. There were good conversations, it sounds like, both in our meeting and the mayor's meeting around communication, especially establishing lines of communication with the police department and other departments. Lots of things like that back and forth. We also heard overwhelmingly a real request for action. In addition to the statements of support, those were welcome, but action was really key. And the specific action that was asked of us was rapid response funding to support these organizations who are really threadbare at the moment, working so quickly to respond to kind of the chaotic environment that has ensued. So this includes things like legal assistance and housing stability for families in Redmond that have been impacted, and especially those families who've been impacted by the loss and disappearance of family members. So earlier today, the mayor and the 3 council members and Director Helen, we put our heads together around how we might be able to respond with some urgency on this funding request. There are other jurisdictions who are also kind of wrestling with this question. And what we'd like to propose to bring to the council next week at the business meeting is an allocation of $250,000 that can be immediately applied to these organizations that are the trusted resources that our neighbors are turning to right now. And we think that this could be allocated from the council's 25-26 budget enhancement that was set aside for stability. We funded that one, just to remind everyone, we funded that with cost savings from the staffing allocations for the current biennium. So that's a tool that we have available to us. It's not a tool that other jurisdictions have, and so they may end up with processes that are a bit lengthier than ours. But would love to hear, feedback and additional comments from the other council member and the mayor. But potentially this could be something that could really be rapid response, because we think that we could get those dollars out pretty quickly.
Thank you. And I will add, I think, because I would just add as emphasis that really what we heard from a lot of our community-based organizations is that they are going above and beyond right now to help families that wouldn't have expected it, that now are in need. They also have faced losses in funding and gaps, especially around some of these areas that are necessary for community stability. And since we had not yet defined how we were going to use that fund, but when we discussed this during the budget process, I think we discussed that we wanted to have some funding that would be available to support our community if this time came in need, that this could be a really great fund. One of the ideas that we had as part of this was that in order to ensure more rapid deployment, we could make eligible for this funding groups that already have received at some point some of our human services funding, so they already have been vetted through our process, and we could essentially work with the human services staff to be able to get this money out as quickly as possible to these organizations through, but also given their knowledge of the need, and really allow these organizations to come to us to pitch what they need. I think one of the big pieces we talked about as well, though, is making sure that it is for these kind of emerging one-time needs. This isn't an ongoing source, but it is something in this moment when it's needed for us to be able to address these gaps. So I will turn it over to the mayor for comments as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation today, and I appreciate the organizations that have been willing to share some of the real big challenges that they've been facing lately, and ways that we can work together, and just sharing what they're doing as well. I think that some of the things we discussed today was ensuring that our online FAQ is up to date. It still is on the front page of our website, so anyone who needs immigration information, that's still been up there. And there's a video that the chief and I did as well to share with people, and we hope people continue to use that as a resource. We will work on updating that as organizations let us know other questions that they have to make sure that we're keeping things as up to date as possible. The opportunity to share a little bit of funding with some of these organizations, I think, is really important right now, to the point that this would be one time only. And we do fully understand that it doesn't completely fill any gap whatsoever, but it is a small part that the city can do to help with some of these very serious emergency needs that some of these organizations have. As we discussed today with Director Helland, her team already has contracts in place with our trusted partners, and so that way we could pretty quickly deploy the funds. We also have human services staff that are very well attuned to what is going on, so they really do know the needs and are well aware as well. And so I do appreciate that some other cities might have more time-intensive processes, but I don't think that as the city of Redmond that we need that. I think that we can move more urgently with the processes that we already have in place. So I know this is an extremely serious issue. I know that is impacting many community members in the city of Redmond and their families. I appreciate the work that all of these organizations do in keeping our community members safe and knowledgeable and informed. And I'm glad that the council and the city, all of us together, can work to bring a little tiny bit of help to this really big, urgent need.
Thank you, Mayor Burney. Councilmember Salahuddin, did you have any other comments you wanted to add on either the conversation we had with our community-based organizations or this proposal?
Nothing else from my side besides the fact that, echoing what Councilmember Stewart mentioned, we have been hearing a lot from not just our community-based organizations, but a lot of community leaders themselves, community members themselves. And, I'm really happy with the way that we were able to identify potential options, potential funding, and resources for these community members who are going through moments in which it might not even seem like, there's hope, at least coming from the federal level. So I'm really excited about this opportunity.
Thank you so much. And I will note that in our conversations, Councilmember Salahuddin brought up that in his state legislative work that he's been serving on a task force around engaging with immigrant communities across the state, and kind of brought in some of the themes that he had been hearing as well from that, which really helped with that conversation as well. So with that, we kind of wanted to move on this as quickly as we ended up getting the idea together, so are bringing this to the council with the hopes that potentially we could put this on new business next week. We could, if a majority of council is interested, we could prepare a memo, and really the proposal would be to allocate $250,000 from our Community Stability Fund towards this rapid response purpose, and we would get a report back from our Human Services Department as that gets deployed, and we can put the details down on paper, but wanted to get the sense from the council on whether folks would be up for moving more quickly on this to be able to move this forward. Council Vice President Forsyth?
We're fighting over who goes first. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting and elegant solution to a really emergent and current problem. I can't for the life of me remember how much we set aside. Do you recall what that was?
I think it was 1.4 million.
I thought, yeah. Great. I am in favor of this because as we laid it out, it was a community stability fund, and this is the current community stability issue. So I'm in favor of it. The only caveat that I'm thinking right now is I want to know what the organizations are that we're going to be putting that money toward. That's we just want to make sure that those are the organizations that we all are interested in making sure are supported. I see Mayor Bernie with her finger on the button.
As we discussed earlier today, we will get council a list of the organizations that would be eligible for this, but there would be organizations that deal with immigrants and refugees and asylees.
Prior to the vote?
Prior to that. So it would be, and organizations we already have contracts with as well, so this will be a pretty streamlined approach.
Okay, thank you. That was one of the only concerns I had. And I just wanted little side note share that I was looking into getting my passport card. So anyone who already has a passport, you can get a passport card, which looks like an ID that you can carry with you. That is essentially the modern day version of carrying your papers with you, unfortunately. But Kirkland, the city of Kirkland has a passport office, and you can actually go there in person and fill out the form and get that process started. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who may find it helpful to carry something like a passport card on them.
Great, thank you. And I will actually note on that as part of what we discussed and what we would think would be an eligible use of these funds is that we heard from several organizations, including groups like Centro Cultural Mexicano, Indian American Community Services, Africans on the East Side. So a real variety of different immigrant groups were saying that being able to do Know Your Rights workshops for people, both staff at nonprofits as well as for the communities they're serving, would be really important. So that could be an eligible use of these funds as well to just make sure that people can have the knowledge they need.
And just as a side note to add on to that, there is an application fee for a lot of those. So I would hope that some of that money could go to some of those groups for maybe covering that $35, $45 application fee for getting that card, just as a side note.
Wonderful. Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. I'm very happy and in favor of moving forward on this. And I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't also acknowledge that one of the areas that we have room to grow and develop is in our communication and the importance of getting this information out. We do have some phenomenal resources as a city that I am so proud that Redmond is able to provide for our community. And often, we'll hear, and we heard it earlier, we didn't even know that these services existed, and making sure that we're getting those connections made. So this is, my next comment is more for the listening public, whoever is listening to it, is helping us spread the word around what resources are available, so that, because we can be very nimble with this right now, and I know that there are just a good amount of families that are impacted that aren't going to even be aware that this exists and going through something that's undue. So the plug is for increased community engagement, increased, of course, civic engagement as well, but talking to your neighbors, that it's not just things that we talk about when we say that we are creating a community that's welcoming and wanting to nurture a sense of belonging, but that we actually take action. And if you're hearing this and you know of a family that could use this, or you just want to keep it top of tongue because of the climate that we're in right now, making sure that we're creating that sense of belonging.
Councilmember Fields?
So council may or may not remember that this was basically my idea. And inside my head, I was calling it the Trump Impact Fund, because I knew that there would be impacts back in February that would both affect our immigrant community, our trans community, LGBTQIA community, and people losing their health insurance. Those things were all pretty clear that they were going to come down to a local level and impact us. So I tried to get as much collaboration out of the council to set aside, as Councilmember Forsyth called it, Community Stability Fund of $1.6 million. What I had hoped is that we would have taken the time prior to this to both find the criteria and where that money is best used, specific for those purposes, and also what our legal boundaries are. I'm a little bit concerned. I'm not afraid, but I am concerned that we don't understand what the federal government may or may not think is appropriate for us to spend money on. I've seen the emails, I've seen the posts. So as much as I'm in favor of this, and I am, I don't think we've taken the time to really understand what we're doing. And I'm a little bit concerned even by the title, Rapid Response. It sounds military in my mind, so rapid response. And I like the idea that we're starting with $250,000 and we're using it for the immigrant, the people who directly serve or directly take an interest in our immigrant community. And I'm not going to oppose this when it comes to our next meeting, but I encourage strongly the mayor and council leadership to come up with a plan for the remaining part of that $1.4 million so that we have a real clear idea of what we're facing in the future. And I think that money should continue to be set aside for these purposes.
Thank you. I will note that I've followed up with Director Cochran, and we've been asking kind of this question about when are we going to be looking at the plan for that money throughout a good chunk of this year, because the goal was to get it out to our community. I think because of where the money was identified in terms of being projected savings from staff salaries, the staff had actually been delaying on bringing forward a recommendation before we closed out the books from the previous year and were able to look into this upcoming year. So the timing right now is kind of perfect where we were able to confirm. I think we still don't have the full picture of, because I think we allocated $1.4 million, but we actually needed to make sure that that's where we ended up landing. That was their estimate. And so, but I did confirm with Director Cochran, who I think is maybe online here with us, that we can be sure around $250,000, which is why we're starting with this proposal, is that we know about this funding. But I agree with you that we should come back to be able to look at the rest of the funding, and that was part of our discussion of what does it look like for the rest of that. I think the other thing that we were keeping in mind, or we will say, Councilmember Stewart noted this, that other jurisdictions are doing this. Last week, the city of Kirkland established a very similar fund to the ones that we're proposing, and they just voted to allocate funding to a similar purpose. So I do think that there is a certain amount, and we were going to use look at what they had done as so that we could have some similarities. And in fact, we found out today that when they put out an RFP, they included saying that they would share any applications that they got to their fund with the city of Redmond. So that way, if there were any good applications and we happen to have funding, because our human services staff were in conversation, that we might be able to jump on that. I think the other piece around kind of who we're going to partner with and how we allocate this, and this being one time, is that that was why we decided just to propose for now, starting with those who already have done contracted human services with us, where this is really kind of a, they can identify the current needs, but it's topping up some of the support that we've already seen from them and where we already know them as these trusted partners. So where we can have some more confidence in that.
So a quick response.
Yeah, Councilmember Fields, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate what you just said, and I understand. We, all jurisdictions, project budgets. So we can assume a level of funding. If it doesn't happen, then we alter our plans, but it doesn't stop us from making plans in the event and the likelihood of that money being there. So we don't have to wait until it's actually there to begin to prepare.
Agreed, and I would definitely like this fall for us. I know that Director Helland was mentioning, since that fund was really also, we talked a lot about supporting housing stability with this fund. Now we're broadening the scope a little bit to be able to address other needs as they may come up. I know Director Helland is going to be coming back to talk more about some of our housing plans and funding strategy, and so hopefully we'll be able to talk more about that during those sessions as well. Any other comments on this? Well, it sounds like there's general support for us to bring this back. We can send information out to council. We'll get it into we'll do a quick turnaround if everyone's good with it, to get into the packet for next week. And we can put it on new business so that if there's more questions or updates, I think we really are trying to move nimbly on this, which is not a usual thing of municipal government. But if there are ideas when you see things come out and we want to make any changes to, especially the specification of how we allocate this fund, I'm happy to take those ideas as well. So, thank you all. Are there other items for council talk time? Mayor Bernie.
Just want to get the date right. Some years ago, prior to me being mayor, we used to do this thing called Mayor's Day of Caring, and I always thought the title was weird, but it stopped, during COVID and all of that. But we've been wanting to bring it back, and so I have invited council and other community members, including our board and commissioners and RIPAC, to join us on Saturday, October 4th. At the Bella Bottega QFC, and we are going to be doing a food drive for Hope Link. So I hope that the council members can make time in their schedule on Saturday, the 4th of October, to join me and others. And I'm looking forward to seeing our community. And in the past, years ago, when we did this, we were really extremely successful. We have such a giving community, and it really helped a lot to stock the Hope Link Food Bank, which also goes to serve many of our community members who are struggling right now. So hope you all will join me.
Thank you. Yeah. A couple other reminders for council and just some upcoming events. This Friday, we're going to cut the ribbon on the Redmond Central Connector 3. It's going to be, years in the making, so I hope everyone will be there. It's our last segment of the East Trail in Redmond, so we're going to be helping with that interconnected 40 miles of trails from Renton to Snohomish, so we're doing our part there. We also on Thursday have the opportunity to join in a 9/11 remembrance ceremony. Next week, on the 18th, we have the Downtown Redmond Art Walk. So for the listening public, the council will have a booth there. And council members, if you signed up, come do your shift. If you didn't have a chance to sign up, you can still join. We'll have the booth there. Will be great to be able to engage with the public on that. We also have we also have a couple other events coming up on the 25th. We have our council conversations, which is going to be in Astera Park. And the rumors are true. There's going to be free ice cream. So please come out and enjoy us. enjoy some conversation with us and some ice cream. And then, what is the last one I was going to bring up? And then we also, I think those are all the top lines for the upcoming time. And then last, I'll just note the Teen Center Subcommittee has been working to give some input, and we've gotten a lot of interest in doing a stakeholder group as well as focus groups that are going to be coming up to gather input into the Old Firehouse Teen Center. The first meeting will be tomorrow night of the stakeholder group, and then there'll be convening that's happening on. There's going to be convenings of the focus groups that's going to be coming out. The purpose of the focus groups, in addition to the stakeholder group, will be really to make sure that anyone who wants to be a part of the process can come, share feedback, and really we can get that feedback back to council and hear from voices that, that we may not have heard from before, as well as, those who really want to engage. Those will be open. There's going to be some different focus groups for teens and preteens, service providers, parents, caregivers, and alumni of teen services. Those focus groups are initially planned for September 22nd and September 24th, September 22nd at 6 p.m., and then September 24th at 5 p.m. The staff will be sending out more information on those coming back. And the focus groups information will come back to council, as well as it'll go to the stakeholder group that's going to be looking at creating a recommendation for council. For those who, and on the stakeholder group, they'll be meeting nearly weekly up until giving an additional recommendation to council that will come back for a study session in November to be able to look at and hopefully have enough information to provide direction on the future of the Old Firehouse Teen Center. So that's just a little bit. We'll be getting some more updates, but I did want to update council on some of that. And just to note that part of what our subcommittee will do is attend the stakeholder group meeting and then meet with staff afterwards to be able to engage with them to say, are there any kinds of feedback that we have on things that council may want as outcomes of this and questions that may need to be answered, or voices that we would see to make sure that we have the right mixture of people in there. So that's been an ongoing conversation and we'll be continuing to follow up. And with that, that's my updates. Any other things for council talk time? Otherwise, we can close out this meeting. Councilmember Fields.
I will be out of town starting tomorrow, so I will be in attendance to the stakeholder meeting online, and I will be in attendance to next Tuesday's meeting online. Have a family issue in California, so I'll be gone for a week.
Thanks for the heads up. All right, Councilmember Stewart.
Gun violence is preventable, and the city of Redmond, we invested in a gun violence prevention program this biennium. So our second gun buyback program is happening on Saturday, September 20th, here on the municipal campus. Look to city emails for more information. But if you have firearms in your home that are no longer wanted or difficult to store safely, know that is a resource on September 20th. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And you reminded me of the last event I was thinking of, which is our city tree giveaway event. So we're giving away trees that are good for our ecosystem and help with our tree canopy. Mayor Bernie, do you know if people can still register for it?
I'm pretty certain the trees sold out for free within days, so no.
Awesome. Well, I mean, not awesome because I wish everybody could get a tree, but glad that there's so much demand. And council members, we're all invited if we want to help to give those trees to the people who are going to be coming to pick those up. So mark your calendars. You should have it all on your calendar. And I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. If there is nothing else for good of the order, this meeting is adjourned.